Welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Join us every Wednesday to learn about the latest cutting-edge developments in the real-time communications industry. ClueCon Weekly is brought to you by FreeSwitch Solutions. Get support and professional services directly from the creators of the FreeSwitch open source project, solving your issues in the most efficient, stable, and scalable way possible. Get the FreeSwitch advantage. Visit freeswitch.com. Also brought to you by ClueCon, the premier technology conference for developers by developers. Join us every summer in Chicago. ClueCon kicks off on Monday with our annual hackathon, The Coder Games, followed by 3 days of technology-rich presentations discussing telecom, WebRTC, and IoT from developers around the world. To learn more, visit cluecon.com or call 877-74-CLUE.
All right, guys, welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Today is the 11th of July, and today we'll be joined by Mr. Chad Hart. For you guys that don't know Chad, he's been around the WebRTC world for quite a while. He's a prolific speaker, blogger, he's a serial entrepreneur, and he's even done work as IMS and other stuff like that. So hang out for that. What he's talking about today should be very interesting. Let's go over and see Miss Abby for the news. Miss Abby, how are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on ClueCon Weekly. If you have any questions during the call, please comment in the YouTube, HipChat, or IRC channels, and we will try to answer them live during the call. So this year, if you haven't heard, ClueCon is going to be from July 23rd to 26th, and it's coming up very fast. So if you haven't already, there's still time to register right now on cluecon.com. If you're already registered, we have a lot of fun networking events lined up for everyone, so be sure to join us for fun food and festivities by FlowRoute and FreeSwitch on Monday, the Gigabit reception on Tuesday, the Signal Wire Bowling Bash on Wednesday, and the ever-popular Voicetel Boat Tour on Thursday. Be sure to check in also on July 25th for a very special episode of ClueCon Weekly. We are going to be doing it live from Chicago, right from the Swiss Hotel, so be sure to check that out. Basic FreeSwitch training and OpenSIPs training is also available for ClueCon 2018. Space is limited, so be sure to register ASAP because that date's coming up very fast as well. You can visit the training page on cluecon.com for more information and to register for that. FreeSwitch Solutions also now offers live virtual training online. You can learn basic FreeSwitch operations from the comfort of your own home or office. So if you're interested in that, email training@freeswitch.com for more information. If you have any suggestions for us for future episodes, if you're interested in being a guest on ClueCon Weekly, please email us at marketing@cluecon.com. We also are always continuing to add instructional videos for FreeSwitch periodically, so make sure you're checking into our YouTube channel for regular updates. And please, 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 as usual, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and sign up for our mailing list to get these and even more fantastic news and announcements from the FreeSwitch team. Hope to see you all at ClueCon. Back to you, Ken.
All right. Thank you very much, Abby. So we're going to jump over and talk to Jersey Mike, and I think we got Brian West for Community Corner this week. Mike, Brian, how you guys doing?
Doing great.
So we had a question today, which I got it not through our normal channels. I came across Signal. And this question is, I have a new FreeSwitch. I want to create a trunk with authentication. I think it's ACL based. How do I connect the calls between the two?
So there's multiple ways to set up gateways. The best thing to do to connect the call is, so you're wanting calls or registration? Is the question.
Calls.
Okay, so what I would normally do in this case is set up a profile specifically for ingress, egress to gateways with no authentication, and then set up the IP ACLs to allow the calls to flow in and out to and from that particular IP for that gateway.
Right, and so we would do it based on the profiles, right?
That's what I would recommend, yes. That's the reason we have it where you can have multiple profiles, because you have the ability to group settings for various interop in each profile, because you may have to have a completely different set of config options for one provider versus the other. And this allows you to group together those settings to ensure your interoperability between the various providers you're trying to send and receive calls from.
And then we could also do it in the user directory too, right?
You can, but in this case, there are some caveats there in the user directory. Depending on how you serve your config, it's usually not recommended unless you have something specifically required to be tied to a user, because there's some aspects of doing a gateway on a user entry where you can fix it where if, say, the user registers, you can make that gateway do an outbound register, kind of like a relay registration, which does help a little bit with some of the SBC scenarios that need or want something similar to upper registration. That's the closest you can get out of the box.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
And where are we going to see you in 2 weeks?
In Chicago.
I can't wait.
Fun.
Yep. So thank you for coming in. Questions from the very, very best in the business, or answers from the very best in the business, right?
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And now to you, Chad. So Chad, thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, if I manage to remember to unmute. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited. I thought I'm actually moderating a couple panels in a couple weeks at ClueCon, one on WebRTC, the other one on AI. Those are both topics I've been spending a lot of time on. So I figured I'd cover some of that today. The panels themselves, well, we got a lot of other speakers, and I won't have much chance to talk. I'll be mostly asking questions. So I'll share some of my thoughts on those topics, and maybe I'll start with WebRTC. And I've done these sessions with ClueCon, I guess, a few times in the past, and I usually give some kind of industry or market update and big new users. I think some of the thanks for sharing the screen. One of the probably the biggest, or one of the biggest new users is YouTube, and they have their new YouTube Live feature. So and this uses WebRTC. If anyone can actually now go to YouTube. There's a little button, where you upload your video. You can actually do a live stream, and this actually allows anyone using WebRTC, if you're in a browser, to do a live stream out to YouTube. And from the looks of it, it's using WebRTC into YouTube's CDN network, and then they use their CDN network from there. But still a pretty big major use case from and this is actually a different team at Google than YouTube's basically set up a different team, and I believe completely different infrastructure than the Hangouts stuff. Another big use case. I'm not a huge Instagram user myself, but Instagram added video chat actually within Instagram. This is another one. Instagram owned by Facebook. I believe they leverage a lot of the same infrastructure in the back end. Facebook Messenger is by far the largest WebRTC user. They're up to, I think, 400 million users. They monthly active users who use voice and video features, which is just massive, right? And Instagram is another really huge application. Just adding more onto that. And other major news, one of the first examples, and when I was doing WebRTC Hack, WebRTC Hacks, the blog, and probably one of our first more popular breakout posts was when we did reverse engineered the Amazon Mayday service, where if you bought a Amazon Fire Kindle, you could just press a button and they actually have a live video chat with the agent. The agent could, at Amazon, the Amazon agent could actually see, control your screen, and you just see them, right? They don't see you; they just see your screen. And that, we just did some Wireshark and figured out that was in reverse engineering a bit, and determined that was based on WebRTC. Well, the Mayday service, actually, Amazon just announced that was going away. But don't be confused. WebRTC is still super huge at Amazon. I mean, Amazon has multiple call center and products, and actually Amazon Connect, which is an offer. It kind of built up from some of its internal call center services, and now it offers that as a service via Amazon Web Services. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty positive. If you use like the Echo Show and a lot of the other Amazon products that include voice and video, and you can actually use your Amazon Echo devices to make phone calls. I'm fairly certain that all uses WebRTC. There's actually something on my to-do list to do some more reverse engineering of that. Some other news, just actually a couple of weeks ago, one of Google's product managers, Sweeb, at the ComCon event, run by Dan Jenkins over in the UK, gave some stats, and Google typically updates these every 6 months or so, but they're up to 1.8 billion weekly minutes just on Chrome. That's up 3 times year over year, and they continue to show a lot of growth and increased downloads even of their mobile. Some of the mobile SDKs or mobile libraries that they have for Android and iOS. In terms of larger industry news, and some of this is one is version 1, right? The version 1.0 of the spec. My opinion, it's pretty stable now. There certainly are little things that come up, but I think there's fewer little things that happen between implementations every day. In addition, largely backed by Chrome, there's been a very big initiative around what's called this Kite framework to do a lot more interoperability testing. This really makes it a big difference, and it's going a long way. You still need to use, and I've talked about this in a bunch of past presentations, but it's still critical that you use Adapter.js, which is the basically the middleware layer kind of between to adapt different WebRTC, or actually to adjust for different WebRTC implementations across, say, Chrome and Firefox and Edge, and now Safari. You still need that. I mean, the Chrome team is and the community is trying to drive towards getting everything so standardized that you don't need to have that adaptation layer. I suspect you're going to need to have that adaptation layer in some levels for some time, but it's great that things are starting to coalesce. And one big initiative, and this is relevant probably, definitely for you guys at FreeSwitch and people dealing with simulcast and more advanced video scenarios, is moving to the unified plan, which is really the kind of standardized way of, or new standardized way of doing SDP in WebRTC, which Firefox had already been doing. Chrome is moving there. So overall, I think things are moving in a really good direction here, and more discussions on what WebRTC 2.0 will look like. But for now, Web 1.0 seems to be pretty going in a good direction, pretty stable. Now, that being said, there have been a few different hiccups and things that have come up along the way. Largely, a lot of this stuff is byproducts of other activities of the browser. I'd say this is particularly Chrome, where WebRTC is one of many media use cases. It's a particular one and probably needier than the others in a lot of ways, but it gets caught in the crosshairs when a team like the Chrome browser, when they go and make changes to improve the overall user experience. Sometimes some of the WebRTC stuff gets messed up. In this example here, just there's an error, an audio context error, and pretty much this is has to do with autoplay restrictions. So, no one really likes when they go to, remember you used to go to a web page and there'd be a video playing and they crank up the volume, it'd be super loud. That was super annoying, so the browser vendors pretty much stopped that and stopped the autoplay video. So people instead started doing super large GIFs, right? And so playing these huge, because it's basically an image and they couldn't stop you from playing an image. So people would do a 30 megabyte GIF file and play a movie in the background. That obviously was not a great user experience either. So they reintroduced, autoplay video with plays in line, but now set up rules to not allow audio, so it's not so annoying. Which for the usual use case where you go to like a newspaper page or something like that, and it's playing a bunch of videos in the background, you probably don't want it to play video. But if you're going to a page where you're joining a WebRTC call, right, and you want to hear the audio, you're answering a call going away, this becomes problematic, right? So there's a series of rules around doing this, and basically you have to do some user gesture first. But one of the hiccups that happened recently was specifically around this audio context with web audio. And it's a fairly common procedure is, before a user joins a call, to let them test their microphone to make sure the microphone's working, right? And that's before the user grants any permission to share their microphone. You're just checking, audio levels, that sort of thing. The recent change that Google had implemented temporarily had messed this up, right? So they since rescinded this for until Chrome version 70, which is going to happen in a few months. So essentially, the moral of the story is if you have an interface, particularly one that checks for microphone volume before the user starts the actual get user media session, if you're displaying microphone volume, or if you're doing anything to play, say, a ringtone or sound to let somebody know a call's coming in, take a look at that spec. I probably should have. We have a really good post on WebRTC hacks by Doug Inga. Put that up there. But definitely read up on that before your implementation gets screwed up. Odds are you probably already know about this because it messed up people for at least in the beta versions of Chrome for a few weeks. So another big area like this, and this is on screen sharing, and another major change here. So I'm sharing my screen now. It's a really great feature, WebRTC. The vendors have taken a few, the browser vendors have taken a few different approaches for how they allow screen sharing. The Chrome team initially was very worried about abuse of screen sharing and someone sharing their screen and inadvertently forcing someone to go to a page or something like that and revealing information that they shouldn't be sharing over the web, right? So Chrome basically went through this path of requiring everyone to install an extension to allow the screen sharing, which is kind of annoying, having to go to the Chrome store and download and install things. So to make that easier, they used to allow an inline extension install inside the web page, which actually, you in most cases went through pretty quick. I mean, not 100% of the time, but they found, not because of WebRTC, but in general for Chrome extensions, they were being abused. I suspect a lot of this came out of like Bitcoin miners trying to basically steal your compute cycles by doing some embedded extension or whatever that runs in the background. So what they've done is basically banned or will be banning inline extensions. So if you don't have an app in the Google, the web store already, this is already in effect, right? You're not allowed to do an inline extension. If you already have a screen share extension like the Verto one now, this will take place in September, I think, timeframe when this will happen. Now, which is kind of annoying. So, and there's no great recourse for this, right? Other than make your users go through a few more clicks. And in some use cases, it's probably not a big deal. In other use cases where users are extremely sensitive, or it's the sort of thing where the company, they would know, the provider of the website knows they would lose 20% of their people if they couldn't get that feature, and if they had to click a couple more times, it could have actually real meaningful consequences for them. So there is a better way of doing this. I mean, Firefox does already. There's another API. It's called Get Display Media. So unfortunately, the timing, this issue has forced the Chrome team to implement Get Display Media. Unfortunately, there's going to be probably a few week gap at least in between when Get Display Media is ready. I mean, they're trying to push it through in time. We'll see if they make that, but I think the net takeaway here is if you're doing screen sharing and you really care about the user experience for how the user installs that extension, pay a lot of attention to this. You will need to use you should probably move to the new Get Display Media API. That has some caveats too. Like today, it basically only takes your screen, unlike the the existing Chrome extension screen share, which also allows you to share your audio. So, but again, pay attention to this. I'll make the link a little bit larger, or just go to WebRTC Hacks. This one was not too long ago. All right, so I mean that's some of the major updates on the WebRTC side. I'd say the overall machine learning for anyone that does computer science is certainly a very big topic, and software and communications telephony is mostly software. So obviously, machine learning is a huge topic in real-time communications too. The marketing people are starting to take over, so machine learning is now, AI, and you see artificial intelligence everywhere. But I think, essentially they're kind of the same thing. Although, to be fair, machine learning has advanced quite a bit. So it is more like futuristic artificial intelligence. But anyway, to cover this topic more, I found I just came off and I was did a lot of work for Voxbone and helped to launch a speech analytics project there, and saw a lot was happening in this space pretty quickly. So one of the things I've gotten more involved in this side area of technology, and launched a new blog there. So I encourage everyone to check that out. It's over at cogint.ai. I only started this last month. There's only a few posts there, but I'll be doing a lot more. And some of you may know, I also, one of the activities I do is the Kranky Geek events. At last year's Kranky Geek event, we included a lot of AI machine learning type talks. Like we had Emil from Atlassian and Jitsi, talk about how they use TensorFlow to help improve with some route optimization type issues, and we had voice-based come and talk about speech analytics, some other topics, and that was very well received. And we're running Kranky Geek again this year on November 16th for anyone that's going to be in the San Francisco area or wants to go there. But given the nature of the topic and more, Sai Levant Levy, who I run that with, and is also the blogger at Blog Geek Me, we decided to put together a market research report on this topic. So I've been spending a lot of time speaking to many different vendors in a lot of different areas about this, and I'll walk through some of those areas and describe it a little bit more. But I did, maybe what people are here watching, we are actually giving a free kind of intro ebook survey, intro PDF document for the report. All you need to do is answer the survey link that we have there. You'll get the results of the survey, obviously, and all that too. And if just getting the report was not enough, we're also raffling off 5 different $100 Amazon gift cards just to help incentivize people, or make you feel like you're getting something for an extra something for your time. So please, please check that out and answer the survey and get more. But let me dive into, I guess, some of the areas in AI and real-time communications. We'll probably touch on a lot of these next week, but definitely the biggest one of our list of like 120, 130 different companies that we're covering as part of this study, more than half of them are doing some form of speech analytics. And historically, speech analytics, a lot of that is just transcription. But it's evolved into being a lot more than just transcribing the call. It's also doing natural language processing, or natural language understanding, actually, of the text after the call to help trigger some output, or try to infer some meaning of that. So there's been a lot of activity here, right? So obvious applications here, in call centers, a lot of use cases, and historically that's where a lot of this technology has been used in call centers. The transcription, like if anyone's used like Google Voice to like transcribe your voicemail, whatever, historically it's been pretty awful. It's definitely gotten a lot better. And as the technology gets better, its use for actually just transcribing a call or a session like we're having now becomes pretty good. And if anyone's actually seen the transcripts that, the auto transcripts that even like YouTube produces on videos like this, they're generally pretty good, right? They're getting so much better. So it's, in the past, transcription, just for transcribing, say, a conference call, you have a bunch of people, probably been marginal at best, right, or completely useless. That's starting to actually be really viable and useful feature, right? And the technology is getting better where instead of just running in an offline after the call mode where you go process it, you actually can start doing this stuff in real time. And when you can start doing things in real time, you get into other applications like agent coaching. And if you're on say an agent's on a call and you indicate you can see the agent starting to get frustrated or the customer starting to get frustrated and upset, you can use some of those signals to actually get the supervisor to come in and help out. So a lot of stuff is getting really interesting, right? And as the technology gets cheaper and there's growing use of like call tracking software, I mean, there's a lot of this data, right? So the marketers are looking at this and like, like there's all this speech data of customers calling in or talking about different things. How do we use that, right? So there's a lot of applications for using the text, the transcribed text for improving customer engagement. And for the real-time communications community, there's a lot of new startups that are emerging in this space to focus on one area or the other. One of the drivers for this in general is that the software is getting better, and a lot of it is open source. I'd say a good chunk of it's open source. So there's libraries out there like Caldy that's been around for a while. There's newer ones like Mozilla has a project called Deep Speech, which is something that they started out of from actually Baidu's engine. A lot of people out there probably, if you're a developer, heard of Google's TensorFlow, which is their machine learning framework, which they open sourced, right? So Deep Speech runs on that, and along with that, they have this Common Voice project where they're collecting voice samples from different people. But it turns out there's a growing corpora of different speech samples, right? Because the hardest part with machine learning, one, you need to have some kind of algorithm to interpret the speech and convert it, right? You need to have your model, but you also need to have a lot of data to make this stuff work. And a lot of times getting the data, even if you can get the model cheaply, if you don't have data to run through the model to train it, it's kind of useless, right? So on the positive side, we're seeing a lot more of that data also be made available for free. And in addition, now you can go to Google has their speech API, Amazon, Microsoft's had one for a while. So there's a lot of different options out there. IBM too for running speech recognition, and increasing amount of and a lot of the models that have been used for doing text analysis and text processing just on web pages, that sort of thing, now can be used on those transcripts, and you're starting to see a lot of new exciting applications for doing a whole variety of things. Along the same lines we're seeing kind of the emergence of voice bots. So I think you see like Alexa or Siri or the Google Assistant, Microsoft Cortana are some popular examples. And they're certainly not perfect, but there's a huge app ecosystem for them, and they're getting a lot better. And you start to wonder, if you're calling into some IVR, why are you still doing touch tone? And even the ones that do allow some speech input, they're usually pretty awful, right? It's not the sort of thing where you can ask a more open-ended question and it's smart enough to figure out your intent and map that to some kind of response. So we're at the very, very early stages of this, but I think we're starting to see some of the consumer-oriented voice bot technology, start to get introduced into, telephony, real-time communications applications out there. So replacing IVRs and really improving that experience is a huge area. Another common frustration in communication is just like getting meetings started or starting a video call group session. So there's a bunch of companies, or a handful of companies, I'd say at least out there, that are really trying to be meeting assistants to help start meetings and coordinate them and take notes. And a lot of this is evolving into not just starting the meeting, but also, why can't you have an assistant, in the call, or someone, hey, like take that action item or make that note. almost like it was a real person or assistant there. If you can automate some of that and use some of this technology, that ends up being pretty interesting. And there's a few different examples of this. I mean, I'm showing IBM Watson here, who's been doing this for a while and has made some good progress and advancements here. They're still largely for larger end enterprises, bigger companies. Although I will say, pretty much anyone can go into IBM's Blue Mix, the IBM Cloud, they call it now, and sign up and start using this stuff relatively easily. Vox Implant, I have a post on this on the cogint.ai site too. But Vox Implant has a Dialogflow connector, which is Google's engine for doing natural language understanding, and kind of the way Google recommends that you build bots for the Google Assistant, and actually other platforms too. There, and then certainly I think we'll hear a lot more about SignalWire in a couple of weeks. I'm really curious there. I'd like to hear more on that too, right? Which is effort by the FreeSwitch crew here, or some of it. So exciting things to come here too. And then go into some other areas like computer vision is a whole other domain. And when we're having a video call like this, I mean, there's a lot of video content. A lot of time that video content, like nothing really happens with it other than other people seeing it. But there's a lot of potential here to take that video stream and do something with it. And probably the largest use case, and actually this is it's actually defined. They had discussion in the IETF, and the use case they call this is funny hats, right? But the ability to just put a mustache on somebody in the video or a hat. Or do something, which is a fun kind of social one to do. And there's a lot of things you do when you start doing facial detection, and then you start overlaying points and stuff like that. Now that's there's a lot of fun consumer social oriented type use cases of that too. But I say there's also, you can get into emotion analysis. It'd be useful if you're doing a webinar. Or some presentation, if you can get some feedback where people paying attention or not. Did they seem engaged? Were they angry or upset? Were they happy? And some of the algorithms and ways of doing this are out there now, and actually not too difficult to implement. You can run them in a browser, and there's things like Google's ML Kit, and Apple has a set too, that you can actually run if you have a mobile application, actually can run all locally. So a lot of this in the past, you would have to actually come up with an architecture to send the stream to a media server, and then run your computer vision on the media server. That can be pretty expensive. As this stuff gets easier to do on the device and on the client, then it gets a lot more practical, right? Because there's really no cost there other than the time it takes to build this stuff. So that's just a few things, right? Gesture detection is another one. There's some JavaScript libraries out there to do that also. That could be interesting, just for controlling a conference. If certainly there's devices like Intel's RealSense that kind of hardware oriented approaches. But what we're seeing is a lot more software oriented approaches and trying to put this into a lot of these, at least the more simplistic ones, can be put into relatively easy algorithms that you can run. Like face detection, gesture detection is definitely practical today. Smile detection, to a certain extent, also, right? Object detection is a whole nother area where you can actually look at the picture and figure out what's going on there. There are several vendors who basically try to detect if there's, say, a whiteboard in the background. And if there's a whiteboard, there's a lot of things you can do just to kind of clean up the image or make it look better. Or perhaps even in a call like this, where if I have a whiteboard behind me, you might want to put that whiteboard in a separate screen or separate image, and keep track of that and try to enhance the drawing so it looks better. So a lot of things like that can actually help to improve the everyday kind of enterprise, collaboration experience or business kind of, collaboration experience that you have out there too. So there's a whole lot here. In addition to doing, facial detection, actually, if you can identify people, potentially using as a quasi authentication scheme. So there's a whole realm of possibilities here that you can do. Not too many people are doing them yet. And I'm a little bit surprised. It might be just a little bit too early. Certainly, like WebRTC and being able to get access to the camera easily in a standard way will make this a lot easier. It'll make it easier for people writing these libraries to hook in to a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I'm still actually a little bit surprised that I don't see more of some of these features in everyday calling, right? Google Hangouts and Skype have done some of this stuff a long time ago, right? But don't see a whole lot, outside of, Cisco's had some, and Microsoft both have had some demos where they automatically identify people in the room and notice the speakers. So it basically give you a virtual name tag. I mean, some of that stuff is interesting too. And again, certainly using some of the cloud APIs and things people have are relatively easy to use. And it's not too hard. A lot of this stuff, a lot of this technology today doesn't actually run in absolute real time in every frame of video that's captured. You're essentially taking, an image every second or every 5 seconds or something like that and sending it up for analysis and then doing something with that afterwards, right? And that makes it a little more practical. Now, as this stuff gets, more, as it gets run in kind of the endpoint and devices, then you can do more in real time. I think that just opens up a whole new set of applications. And the final area in the report that we're looking at, and is another area that we'll talk about in a couple of weeks during the panel, is just using machine learning to help optimize real-time communications, right? So improve the quality, media quality, and also routing. And I think there's a lot of opportunities here to help save costs for larger providers also. Not a whole lot here going on publicly. I mean, we've talked to a couple of vendors that are looking at ways of doing noise suppression. I mean, Mozilla is another example of a good open source project. They have their RN noise kind of project where they're looking at using machine learning to make noise, suppression better. I'm not actually totally sure. I'm sure there's probably some machine learning involved, and Google, even for our WebRTC call connectivity here. For me, like they have a new echo canceller, their AAC3 that's coming out. I'm sure that includes some machine learning there. But you get into some interesting, situations where you're trying to deal with packet loss and packet loss concealment and error correction. So there's, on the research domain, a lot of work to figure out how to predict what the next, if you're looking at a video, to predict what the next frame or what the image will be and manipulate that. If you combine some of that stuff with error correction, you can actually get some pretty good video without actually having a lot of information, right? By using machine learning to kind of fill in the gaps, rather than using some of the heuristic or averaging methods that we have today. Machine learning techniques can be substantially better. And just looking overall at network topologies and how to best route calls through. Route optimization can take a few different paths, and one is just actually how does a call or the media traverse through the network, and how to best optimize that. And instead of looking at a few different factors, you basically use machine learning a larger number of factors and let it figure it out. So I think there's a lot of good potential there. And then even in the call center environment, it's a huge problem too. Is how do you route an inbound caller to the best agent, right? Or to an agent that is knowledgeable of the situation and can answer it, but and trading it off with how long the user's been there and what they're worth. So there's a lot of optimization that can be potential here as well. So yeah, it's all stuff planned to cover in a couple of weeks, a lot more detail. If you're going to ClueCon, which you should be, hopefully, the WebRTC roundtable is happening on Tuesday, and the AI roundtable is happening on Wednesday. And one last reminder: take the survey. Get an ebook, and hopefully you'll win an Amazon $100 gift card. Link is there one last time. There's a link to the report if you're interested in seeing or learning more about that. And there, feel free to email me and my contact information, various different blogs. are here as well.
So Chad, I was actually I was at ComCon in the UK, and so that statistic you showed, that was a really interesting statistic. Just staggering how quickly the growth, almost like that hockey stick type growth when it.
Yeah, I didn't update it for this presentation. I'll save it for 2 weeks when I do my intro to the panel. But I usually have a graph that shows like number of monthly active WebRTC users that I try to, just based on estimates of, some of the major vendors and growth. But it's, yeah, it's huge. I mean, WebRTC it's everywhere. I know it can be frustrating for especially a lot of the more traditional telecom telephony people because they haven't really seen any growth or impact from it, right? Because it's basically you were already making phone calls. It's just another way to make phone calls. It hasn't really fundamentally changed things for a lot of people. But if you look at someone like Facebook, I mean, they weren't doing calling before. I mean, technically they did an early experiment with like Skype, right? But Facebook now is like one of the world's largest carriers, right? With 400 million monthly active users. It's just insane, right? But they can do that because they have like over a billion users to work from, right? But it's still pretty good that 40% of their user base now is using, voice and video, from them for this. That's just one, and it excludes.
And so in
all
that
the stuff Google's
example, it
doing.
would be really interesting. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see where these guys go with it, right? Because they've done so much and they've picked up such an enormous amount of communications in a relatively short period of time, right? But the one component they're missing is that tie into the PST. So I think at one point or another that is going to happen. The
Yeah,
question is, how do you orchestrate it? How does it occur? How do you take, billions of minutes like that, and then all of a sudden try to go from what was so for them, they have such a high level of kind of understanding of it, and then all of a sudden try to send it through to the PSTN in some way or form, or mobile.
yeah, I'm not so sure someone like Facebook wants to. One, I think, well, one, like they're global, right? But the regulatory framework for figuring out how to do that in every country is a real pain in the butt. Now, certainly they're big enough they can figure it out, but do they need to? Like, if everyone that you want to talk to is on Facebook, and Facebook, wants everyone to be on Facebook, like, why would they have to even go to the PSTN? Like, what do they have to gain by letting people make phone calls where basically they lose control of the experience, and it's going to be substandard to what they could provide if it's just a Facebook to Facebook user.
Well, the thing is, it's about inclusion and integration of other services. So, like, from a perspective of let's take a mobile phone, right? If they can truly connect to the mobile phone, and then if they can take that concept that Apple's taken and use the carrier as a dumb pipe and really do some really more interesting things, and connect to, in the end, more people, and get closer to it.
Yeah, I don't. And I think a lot of it's because Facebook doesn't really sell a phone or device. I mean, they haven't they don't have as many hooks into the carriers. I do think Apple is more interesting, and actually, I'd say in terms of telephony integration, I think Google is probably the most interesting. Amazon too. So both Amazon and Google allow you to actually make phone calls, PSTN phone calls. Definitely in the U.S. I don't know what countries, but I use it. It doesn't always work, but I can basically say call the restaurant down the street and put an order in for me. It'll call. I just call the restaurant down the street, right? They don't actually call it, and I can talk to somebody via my home smart speaker device. One of the things I probably should have mentioned this, I realize it's a huge omission now, is like Google Duplex. And for people who haven't seen that, at Google I/O a couple months ago, basically Google showed an example of an automated phone call, placing an outbound call into a restaurant to book a reservation, right? And it was completely machine. And what really caught people off guard was that I think it was more on the text to speech side of things, where they intentionally inserted these speech disfluencies, right? So like the person said and like intentionally made the sound, the synthesized sound like they kind of didn't know what they're doing, or like had some questions, like a real person would in a conversation, right? So it sounded very realistic. Now, obviously, like they don't have to do that. They basically made it sound dumber so it'd be more human. But I think that the fact that how human it sounded caught people off guard. But that's actually really real technology. Google is, they seem to be starting to roll that out. The use cases for that are going to be pretty limited, like pretty typical. Like if you go and search on a restaurant as an example, it shows you their opening hours, but you know if they're open on a holiday or not. So they're thinking like, they'll just set this up to call if there's a bunch of people searching for restaurant hours, rather than people calling up. Why don't they just call on behalf of the user, see if the restaurant's open on the weekend or whatever, and then just display the information on the web, right? But I think. So Google, in that case,
there was a lot of controversy about that demo too,
yeah,
though, right?
I think there's a lot to it. So you can get into like, should there be robots calling us? Should the robots identify themselves as robots? If they identify themselves as robots, are you still going to talk to them the same way? I mean, there's a whole lot there. But I do think the interesting aspect is Google. I mean, they're like web people, right? They could be pushing small businesses and make things easier for small businesses just to publish their information to the web, right? They could have made some email interface or whatever, but instead they chose to actually make phone calls to phone. Basically they identified that the best way to reach, and they say it's like 60% of small businesses don't have any kind of online ordering system, right? They realized that the best way to do this is actually use the PSD and the phone network. Right. So the direction Google is going, some of this technology, at least, is they're very heavily integrating it with the phone system. A lot. And I'd say even Amazon, with a lot of what they're doing, and a lot of their stuff is more SIP oriented, which wasn't the case just a couple years ago, right? They might have been doing some of that stuff internally, but in terms of the external offer, they didn't have any of it. So some of that part's interesting. Apple, are they have any APIs that allow you to make like phone calls or leverage like SIP and other? Apple doesn't seem to be doing anything there. Facebook.
I actually heard a really interesting story about how FaceTime was set up. And so, FaceTime, one of the things they did was really, really smart. I only heard about this a couple of weeks ago. They basically put equipment in every carrier hotel. So, it was that's why the FaceTime stuff was so efficient, because they had infrastructure everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't. They got actually sued early on. Like they got sued by somebody for a long time too. But I think they were somewhat forced to they didn't have any option. Like they basically had to do things like kind of inefficiently because of some lawsuit where they got sued over a long time ago. It's like Vertex. I'll have to go look that up. It's been a while, but yeah, I think. I wish I knew more about the FaceTime. We've tried to look at some of that, but it's pretty tough to pick apart. And certainly they don't help at all. We'll tell you what's going on and how FaceTime works.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Google services. I've got Google Fi, and I travel a lot, and so it's the way they have the roaming arrangements and everything. It's absolutely amazing, it really is. But they've done some really wonderful things where you just you swap between multiple networks on the fly and everything. Integration is great.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems
all the different MVNOs that are out there. I think they really they put together one of the.
It seems that Google is looking to innovate on the service side of things. On like the Google Cloud, there's still no telephony APIs, right? They're definitely not doing anything that's like a communications platform as a service, CPaaS, on that side of things. Amazon is maybe a little bit different. I mean, Amazon, other than they actually do have some text messaging APIs, they don't go that low. They're doing more service type things that they're playing around with, which is interesting out there. I guess Microsoft too. Microsoft has an existing ecosystem of their what used to be Link, now Skype for Business, and that's just super complicated and messy, and I don't think it lends itself well to the Google's cloud initiatives. But I'm a little bit surprised that, like, given Microsoft's focus on Azure and pushing everything there, that they haven't forced those guys to make their stuff easy and plug into that. But at least I haven't seen that yet.
The thing is with RTC and everything, just some of those legacy services, I think they're going to completely disappear because there's so much more convenience of just having everything work 100% in the browser. Like, why would I install buggy software?
Yeah, I mean, at some point it's easier just like for even like from a development perspective, just to start over, right? Like, rather than try to adapt stuff, it should be so much work to try to just start from scratch and make it clean. And I give Microsoft and Skype. I mean, they do have Skype. There are there's the Skype web client. I have used it. I did a post with some of the product management team behind Microsoft's their WebRTC and the WebRTC stuff they're doing. And Microsoft does a lot of different things in WebRTC. It's not just around one stack. I mean, it's a big company, a lot of software, obviously. So they have a lot of good initiatives going on, but WebRTC is just kind of a feature of what they do, not like the thing that they do, right? It's not like necessarily a bespoke item that they feel like they need to call out all the time. It's just an enabler that they add to things and sprinkle throughout the organization.
Okay, so we're gonna see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. Talking more about. I won't be talking as much. I'll be asking questions, and other people are answering. But at least I don't know, for anyone listening to this, they'll get some sense of what I care about, what I'll be asking about going in.
Actually, hey Chad, we have a question from YouTube for you.
Sure.
Yeah, James Bodie wants to know if you're going to be doing some WebRTC dangerous demos.
I probably should. I don't know if you can see. I got a robot that I've been working on that's does a bunch of cool things. I'm trying to make it shoot my cats to train them to not jump up on my counter and eat food around. Maybe I'll bring that. That could be interesting.
Don't bring the cats.
No, not the cats. I'll just shoot Jim.
and when you say shoot, you're referring to like Nerf, right?
Yes, yeah. It's a I hooked up a Nerf gun to it. It works pretty well. I've been trying to do. I've been playing around a lot, and Google has these little AI yourself AIY kits for doing like computer vision and speech recognition, that kind of thing. I've been trying to train it to shoot recognize my cats and train and shoot things. So combining that with some call-in service, I'll think about that. There might be some fun things I could do there.
Yeah, okay, well, we look forward to seeing you. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I look forward to seeing everyone there again too.
Oh yeah, definitely. And before we let you go, Chad, we've got one more question from the guy from Dave P. In the Verdo chat here. He was asking what if you have any quick thoughts on browsers and WebRTC and V6 readiness.
Quick thoughts. No. V6. I don't think about. I guess the question specifically around using V6. Let me look that up. I haven't looked into that specifically in a while. But I can do it pretty quick. Maybe ask Dave or just shoot me a quick email. I'm happy to look into that.
Yeah. What is he referring to? Like some of the NAT properties or something like that?
Well, some of the home routers, they'll offer V4 and V6 addresses. They'll stack everything, and then some of the VoIP servers, when trying to do WebRTC, like zip over WebRTC or whatever, they start getting confused when they get both V4 and V6. So. Some thoughts on that. Maybe that's a good question for the panels at ClueCon.
I do think it is. It's not something I've played around with recently. I did try some of that stuff in the past, but yeah, that will definitely be a good topic for a couple weeks. Also, V6 support.
Cool. Thanks, Chad.
All right, well, Ken, back to you.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Chad and Mr. Michael. Don't forget, guys, ClueCon is coming up here. It's only about a week and a half away. If you haven't got your tickets for it, go get them right now. Also, don't forget, click that subscribe button below the YouTube video here. And right next to it, you'll see a little bell pop up. Be sure you click that so you'll get the notifications when we post more videos or when we're going live in the future. Also, don't forget to click that little thumbs up for us. That helps out get some of these videos more noticeable out there. So we greatly appreciate that. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good weekend.
You've been watching ClueCon Weekly. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central. Keep up with the latest happenings by subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or visit us at freeswitch.com.